Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Lessler, volunteer leader with the Sierra Club with a couple of Zoom reminders. Keep your mute on, and if you have questions, you can put them in the chat as we go along, and we'll try and get to as many questions as we can. And now I'd like to turn it over for our welcome to Chelsea Fairbank.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Fairbank. I'm actually coming to you from the Wabanaki Confederacy, which is the Dawnland. Wabanaki peoples call the Anishinaabe the West cousins because Anishinaabe folks walked from the Dawnland in Maine here to where they are and have been stewarding around the Great Lakes. So it's a nice full circle to kind of have that representation here. And we're so thankful for you to be here and to share this knowledge with us that Waadookawaad Amikwag has been collecting and would want to share with you. So I'm going to turn this over right now to Victoria McMillen from Fond du Lac so she can open up our webinar in a good way. Victoria?
Bonjour and dinner Margaret de Bungia to go in the town of Shnabe Moen. A dashing go to and jet in the Shnabe Moen Moyan. Victorian Indigenous cars Jaganash among the Gizaquain Indigenous cars or Jiboy among the Indigenous came a go in the Moya Yates. And the Gizagas and the Dame and the go beneath in the Gacha and young them doing Jabba. Guaba Iganing doing Jabba dash. Niganug Ninda Abnuji and Sug Nijo Nin Bozasug Nijo Nindanasuk. The teaching of the seven fires prophecies and the seven grandfather or grandmother's teachings have guided my work since I first learned of them. I want to share some of those teachings today to open us up and how I see our group carrying some of those forward, however pitifully, and why I am grateful to be a part of the group and the work that we do together. Gete Anishinaabe, back in the day, 7 prophets came down to our people and offered 7 different prophecies that helped guide us since before contact, passed down orally and through birch bark scrolls and wampum belts to the future generations. These teachings have shown Anishinaabe throughout time what is to come and how they could overcome all that was to happen to the future generations on Turtle Island. Each of these prophecies that we refer to as the 7 fires, we have seen come into reality. Some elders have said that we are in the time of the 7th fire. During the first fire of the Anishinaabe, our people were already living by the 7 grandfather or grandmother teachings, a set of values that guide our hearts and minds through the decisions we must make in this life. Each of these teachings is dependent on the other. We all must learn to practice to carry them in balance, to have a good life. One of the 7 teachings is represented by a Mick, the beaver. Nabawakawin is our word for wisdom. The building of a community is entirely dependent on gifts given to each member by the Creator and how those gifts are used. The beaver's example of using his sharp teeth for cutting trees and branches to build his dams and lodges expresses this teaching. If he did not use his teeth, the teeth would continue to grow until they became useless, ultimately making it impossible for him to sustain himself. The same can be said for human beings. One spirit will grow weak if it is not fulfilling its use. When used properly, however, these gifts contribute to the development of a peaceful and healthy community. Like the beaver, Waadookawaad Amikwag, volunteers use their gifts and their callings to come together to do the work that we do. A multicultural group of Indigenous people and allies coming together to create community, a better understanding, and a new path forward. 6 more prophets came and left the Anishinaabe people after offering each prophecy they were sent to give. When the 7th prophet came to the Anishinaabe, he was different. He had eyes that had fire in them, and he brought a message not only to the Indians, but also to the light-skinned race. He said that at the time of the seventh fire, new people will emerge. They will retrace the footsteps of their ancestors and will try to find those things that have been lost along the way. They will approach the elders in search of guidance. It will not be an easy task, but if they are good of heart and pure intention, they can prevail. Some of the elders will be sleeping, and some will have nothing to say. Others will say nothing out of fear. The new generation must be fearless in their quest. The light-skinned race will be at a crossroads. If they continue down the road of materialism, it will be their destruction, and for all of humanity as well. But if the light-skinned race chooses to join with the natural people of this land on the spiritual path, they will again have the chance to create a nation, the greatest and spiritual nation to ever have existed. Two other races will join these two races. Together, they will light the eighth fire, the final fire, an eternal fire of peace, harmony, brotherhood, and sisterhood. We are pitiful human beings, but we are doing our best to retrace the trail as Indigenous people and reclaiming our traditional ecological knowledge and making sure it is being re-acknowledged by our people, our allies, and by the broader world. We hope to be doing good work here as we share our findings with all of you here today. Our team members strive to continue to live lives that are reclaiming the natural instructions of respecting the Mamanki, our Mother Earth, and all of the gifts that she offers. We hope by sharing what we have found, we can empower you to use your gifts to help make a difference in our shared world. Miigwech Bizendawieg, Jawanimishin, Jawanimishin, Miigwech. With that, I'll pass it to Jami Gaither.
Hello, everybody. Ni Jikwewa Ga Wijibimosewa East Savannah River. Two women walked along with East Savannah River back in December of 2021, just a few months after tar sands began pumping through Enbridge's new Line 393, and they found really strange discoloration in the water. So they started calling friends to see what we can do. And now we're a small group of thoughtful, committed people who are working together to try and bring change to the world. What you're going to see today is an overview of some of the damages that we have accumulated documentation for over the last few years. You're going to learn about the impacts that are being made that you're not maybe hearing about in mainstream media. And you're going to get in touch with, at the end, a website that we are launching today where you can deep dive into this evidence to your heart's content and to, unfortunately, your sadness, because it's really, really ugly. But today we're going to give you some ideas for how you can get involved and how you can make a difference. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea for some introductions. Miigwech.
Thank you, Victoria, for reminding us of such a deep and important centering. And thank you, Jami, for giving us the origin story of Waadookawaad Amikwag. I'm just going to introduce fellow volunteers here that make up part of Waadookawaad Amikwag. We are volunteer run, and these are some of the core members who are with us today. My name is Chelsea Fairbank. I'll be your moderator. I'm an environmental anthropologist who is also involved with the movement to resist Line 3 from being embedded into Anishinaabe wetlands, the aftermath of which we're dealing with today and moving forward. Victoria McMillen, Nagajuwanang, Fond du Lac, First Descendants, also tribes from Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota and Canada, cultural consultants supporting aspects of this work. Abby Sunde, also Nagajuwanang, First Descendant, previous environmental technician, environmental scientist, biology, environmental sciences. B, Kakac, licensed drone pilot. You'll see some of B's work today in the video we'll show you, supporting this field and science, giving us the sky view that we need to keep protecting this water. B is also an evolutionary biologist. Jackie Christensen, field leader, supporter, creating science initiatives that continue to open doors for Waadookawaad Amikwag's work. Jami Gaither, line 3. She serves as, she was a metallurgical engineer, and now she is sort of a centrifugal force in Waadookawaad Amikwag. And Jeff Broberg, Minnesota licensed professional geologist with 40 years of experience. I've been in the rooms with all of these people who continuously are kind to each other in creating this important work and then sharing it out in the many ways. And again, we're just very thankful that all of you are here to listen to this today and hopefully become involved. This is Abby Sunde. We'll hear a little about her work with Waadookawaad from this video.
Bujunindoy makanitag, Bangia tago nenata nashnabim, Abby Sunde Indigenka shaganashmang, North Central Wisconsin and Donjiba, Minnesota and Donji, Madison, Wisconsin and Dayanungam, Nagachi Wanang Ijanakare Kishkanikan Wanjibayan. Hello, my name is Abby Sunde. I'm a current student at UW-Madison. I grew up in North Central Wisconsin, spent 12 years of my adulthood in Minnesota, and I'm a first-generation descendant of the Fond du Lac Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe. If you're just hearing about Waadookawaad Amikwag, I want to say an especially warm welcome. I first learned about their work through a webinar similar to this one in the fall of 2022. After hearing about the work they were doing, I knew I wanted to help out in whatever ways I could. Shortly after attending their webinar, my mentor, soil scientist Jeff Simmering, approached me about an opportunity to apply for a community-based water research grant. This grant, which is funded through the Mortgage Center for Public Service and Water at UW, seeks to support community efforts regarding water. We approached Waadookawaad Amikwag to support their community efforts, and we were so excited when they agreed. It's been really exciting to support this work and the efforts of some truly amazing people. Through additional funding through the USDA Earth Partnerships Tribal Student Fellowship Program, this work has been able to expand from its original scope and continue. I want to mention that during this webinar, sometimes you'll hear us say line 3, sometimes you'll hear us say line 393. Line 93 is the replacement and the expansion of line 3 that was completed by Enbridge in 2021. Looking at this map, you can see the ways the route of line 3 changes and the ways it followed a similar trajectory from the original line 3. Saying line 393 is our way of acknowledging the most recent pipeline versus line 3's original route. The work and research this grant supported included focusing on capacity building and supporting the mountain of labor that Waadookawaad Amikwag has been doing since its inception. I'll be speaking a bit to the fieldwork that was conducted through the grant, but I want to acknowledge the work that was done through this grant was building on the wealth of knowledge and experience of the members, and I'm really grateful to be a part of it. My work included supporting capacity building of the group, coordinating a large multi-site, multi-day field visit this summer, and general science support. So specifically, this multi-day field event focused on 2 regions of the pipeline corridor. 3 field visits were focused on the line 393 corridor near Itasca State Park, and 5 field visits were focused on the line 393 corridor near Fond du Lac. When we conduct these site visits, we begin by field observations in determining the visual ecological disruption that we can see, and we do a general site survey to record the observations that we have. After the site survey, we collect field meter readings of the water throughout the site. This helps us determine areas of concern that we might have seen through the drone, and this allows us to verify on the site with the handheld meter equipment. Once we've located these areas of concern, we also collect water samples for third-party analysis through an independent certified laboratory. We follow laboratory best practices for the sampling, including chain of custodies, which provides a legal paper trail of how the sample went from the sampler's hands to the laboratory. This type of fieldwork, the type that Waadookawaad Amikwag members like Jackie and the whole field team have been doing with such frequency, is so crucial. In observing the land, seeing the disruption, documenting it, and conducting field meter readings and collecting samples, a larger story emerges. The water tells us what's happening. The water samples give us a picture of the water chemistry and where it originates from. This is really important. Through collecting water samples, we can begin to understand if the water is likely surface water or if it's coming from deeper in the ground, which indicates that it could be an aquifer breach. Through collecting data and observing the sites, we're able to look for disruptions at sites caused by the installation of the pipeline and build evidence of the harm. Something also that's really important to note is the way this work can be applied and adopted by different citizen scientist groups. Waadookawaad Amikwag has been conducting these field visits for years now to show the damages caused by the construction of the pipeline in these sensitive ecosystems after construction of the pipeline. But I think that it's really important to also note that work has a lot of potential before a pipeline is constructed too. By having eyes along proposed routes, documenting the sensitive areas of land, conducting drone work along a proposed route, maybe even getting baseline water samples of bodies of water at potential crossings, could have so much impact in developing a narrative of the dangers of disrupting these sensitive environments. Like what we're currently seeing along the damages along Line 393, and the harm that will be caused from any potential future pipelines, like Line 5 in Wisconsin. These are conversations that need to be happening. Documentation like this can help inform regulators about the permanent damages that a pipeline's existence causes on a landscape. Chimikwich for your time to hear about this work.
We're so thankful for Abby for sharing that video. And now we're going to hear from Jeff a little bit about the power of community science
and where it can be applied.
Thank you. And thank everyone for coming today and attending this. I'm going to just speak briefly and introduce the notion that this is continuing an ongoing damage, and the work that Waadookawaad has been doing for a couple of years really came to a point where we had some vindication in November 2022 when Enbridge was charged with criminal charges for breaching 3 aquifers that had been part of stipulation agreements. The unsettling part was that it stipulated that after a year, the charges would be dropped if there were no more violations. Let's have the next slide. Our work over time, with the great commitment of people going out in the field, assessing data, making sure we have high quality data, resulted in us understanding that there were at least 10 different types of damage on the pipeline. Everything from ecosystem damages to peatland damages and frac outs and hydrologic damages. And as we were doing all of this documentation in 2022 and 23, we saw they weren't complying with the law. There were many places where there were still aquifer breaches, where there's still unfinished or damages that would not be replaced. So we had the opportunity at that point to try to intervene in the diversion agreement. I'm going to turn it over now to my good friend and attorney, Karuna Ojanen, who on behalf of interveners filed suit trying to put our case before the court that the people of Minnesota have been harmed. Here's Karuna.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Waadookawaad Amikwag, for this presentation. Because the Minnesota State Attorney General had filed criminal charges against Enbridge, we used me and several other plaintiffs, Defend Water, RISE, and Minnesota Well Owners Organization, tried to intervene in the criminal case under the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act, Section 9. And we bless Waadookawaad Amikwag for providing all of the incredible evidence that was submitted with the intervention request. Unbeknownst to us, the Attorney General of Minnesota opposed it, and it went into my email wherein the judge said, no, you can't. MERA, the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act, is a civil suit, and no, you cannot intervene in a criminal matter. I wrote a response to that, which was not necessarily timely, but I think it's still valid. I think there are provisions in the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act that allows people to intervene in criminal matters. And that's sort of where we stand now. And I have, if anyone's interested, please put your email in and I can provide the intervention, the request for intervention, and the motion and the response to the Attorney General and to the courts in their denial of the intervention in a criminal matter. One of the things that MERA does, let me go here. MERA allows, I'm going to read from the statute here. MERA allows that anyone can intervene, and this is really the actions of a state. And so legally, how the case arose was the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources asked the Minnesota Attorney General to file an action against Enbridge because it was appropriating water without a permit and on a particular breach. Now, we had Waadookawaad had presented evidence of at least 8 breaches, and there may be up to 45 breaches of an aquifer for which Enbridge did not obtain permits from the State Department of Natural Resources. So Section 9 of the Minnesota Environmental Rights Act allows anybody to file a verified pleading against the Department of, against anyone that involves conduct that has caused or continues to cause the additional pollution, impairment, and destruction of the air, water, land, or other natural resources within the state. We're using this as a way to protect the rights of nature. And if additional breaches, and my understanding is that the Department of Natural Resources has asked the Minnesota Attorney General to file an additional criminal action against Enbridge. And there's a possibility to go ahead and pursue an intervention in this criminal matter. I would, if indeed that does happen and we can get the appropriate interveners, I would ask for some of the organizations, the nonprofit environmental organizations, to perhaps join as interveners. And so if we have lawyers on here on the call for some other environmental organizations, please let me know and give me your email. I'll send you the arguments and we can go from there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Karuna. Jeff, did you have any concluding thoughts on this piece?
Yeah, I'd just like to say how disappointed we were that the state of Minnesota and the environment aren't protected in criminal proceedings. That seems like an untenable precedent. And we were really disappointed, like I put in the chat, that as far as we can tell, the Attorney General only contacted Enbridge for their opinion. The DNR PCA didn't weigh in, and the court did not allow us to weigh in. That is the definition of regulatory capture in our courts.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Karuna. We're going to move on to B, who's going to introduce her work.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm going to introduce this video. So my name is B. Kakac. I'm the drone pilot for Waadookawaad Amikwag. I joined the front lines of the fight against Line 3 in December 2020, and I joined WA in the spring of 2022. I've put hundreds of miles on my 2 drones on behalf of Waadookawaad and our water and our land. And this work means a lot to me, and I'm really happy I get to share it with you all. So the video we are about to watch together is a site tour of 11 locations along Enbridge's Line 393 corridor. We'll see a variety of Enbridge's construction damages beginning on the west side of Minnesota, along the Red River of the north, and ending on the east side of the state, 400 feet west of the Fond du Lac Reservation. Most of the footage we'll see I took last summer in 2023. So first, some context about our methods of data collection. In November of 2021, a month after construction was declared complete on the pipeline, a fixed-wing airplane with a thermal camera flew the entire Minnesota portion of the new Line 393 route. From that data, 45 hotspots were identified. These are temperature anomalies along the pipeline route that indicate possible groundwater upwellings. So groundwater naturally surfaces at about 45 to 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So, for example, on a 20-degree winter day, we are able to easily see through the thermal camera upwelling groundwater that is about 30 degrees warmer than the rest of the ground temperature. So the 45 hotspots from 2021, from the 2021 thermal data, along with the observations from the ground, has guided a lot of WA's drone work. Going to each of these 45 sites to gather visual and thermal data to compare to the 2021 data and to inform us all of the condition of these sites throughout time. So far, Minnesota state agencies and the media have publicly acknowledged 4 aquifer breaches caused by the construction of Line 393. The Clearbrook Terminal in Clearwater County, LaSalle Creek also in Clearwater County, Moose Lake in Aitkin County, and at Fond du Lac in Carleton County. Waadookawaad Amikwag unfortunately has evidence of many more aquifer breaches, which we will see in this video. But because of our limited time on this webinar, we cannot spend the amount of time on these sites that they deserve. So yeah, let's watch the video. Throughout this video, I will be using the Watch the Line map to help orient folks with the locations of the footage shown. Our first location is in the far northwest corner of Minnesota on a tributary of the Red River. Here we are looking northwest up the corridor. Common to many of the hotspot sites, there are obvious damages such as this dried up riverbed at the crossing of the pipeline. Let's zoom out from the Red River and move to the next site at Middle River, also in Marshall County. This is one of 21 sites that Enbridge used a horizontal directional drill, an HDD, to bore under the river. Enbridge says, although land around the drill entry and exit locations is disturbed during HDD activities, it will be restored to its pre-drilled state. Next, we move to the Snake River, also in Marshall County. This river was featured in a video titled, "Where Did the Snake River Go?" In August 2021, the river had all but dried up. Nothing but a few puddles remained where the pipeline crosses. During this flyover, 2 years later, we can see that the river is higher, yet there is still a ridge of bare ground right where the pipeline goes under. Next on the map is a cluster of 3 sites, all within 2 miles of each other, but because of time, we will only look at 2 of them. At this site, there is a stream along the road that gets much larger at the edge of the pipeline corridor, where the water is upwelling from the ground. Along most of the construction route, Enbridge drove sheet piling into the ground to form a trench to drop their pipeline into. This is what it looks like. The sheet piling that Enbridge drove too deep into the ground pierced aquifers, which is the source of the upwelling water. Here we have a thermal image of the upwelling water. We can see the 56-degree Fahrenheit temperature. Because this site is legally accessible by the public, we are able to visually confirm this upwelling on the ground. You can see a pretty strong flow of water here. The next site is about half a mile from the last. Both of these sites were trenched using sheet piling. This site has a similar thermal signature as the last site, indicating another upwelling of water. The next site is the Clearbrook Terminal, the site of the first reported aquifer breach in Clearwater County. Enbridge didn't report the breach to the DNR. In 5 days after the breach, on January 26, 2021, Enbridge requested a 10-fold increase in their water appropriation permit. The DNR then sold Enbridge an additional 4.5 billion gallons of water for $150. The DNR found out about the breach 5 months later, the breach didn't get fixed for a year, and 72 million gallons of groundwater spilled out of the breach. This is what it looks like today. The next site, Walker Brook, has been through 3 years of ongoing construction as Enbridge moves their equipment in and out of this precious place for reasons unclear to us. WA has a different video about Walker Brook that I encourage you to watch. Let's have a break from looking at the harm Enbridge has caused and look downstream at Walker Brook Lake, just north of the construction. The next site is the Mississippi River, just a few miles downstream of the headwaters. This is the site of the first iteration of the firelight encampment, as well as where multiple frackouts were reported. A frackout is when drilling mud from the horizontal directional drilling is pushed up through the riverbed from pressure beneath. Enbridge caused at least 28 reported frackouts during construction, exceeding the typical 50% failure rate, with 67% of their HDDs fracking out. Here's the river just downstream of the construction damage. The next site is La Salle Valley, another place that has been through years of ongoing construction. The DNR knew the La Salle Valley crossing would be problematic, yet they permitted it anyway. In August 2021, Enbridge and their contractors again breached an aquifer with their sheet piling. To fix the breach, workers inserted about 135 23-foot-long steel pipes throughout the valley and injected over 51,000 gallons of grout. This created a permanent, underground, reinforced concrete wall over 20 feet high in places and 2.5 football fields in length. What you are seeing here is Enbridge's attempt at remediating the valley. Enbridge clear-cut nearby trees and laid them on the land. The next site is about 12 miles away at Hay Creek, another HDD location. We are confident in our evidence that there is upwelling water here. However, we think that this probable aquifer breach was caused by past pipeline construction and not Line 393. This reinforces the questions regarding where the state agencies are. Why are volunteer community groups doing the work of the state? We can see the cool water temperature indicating upwelling water. The next site is Moose Lake, a beautiful Manuman or wild rice lake that Enbridge trenched just 50 feet from the southern shore, creating several aquifer breaches in the wetland. Moose Lake exists within complex wetland and peat bog ecosystems which support many relatives, many species of fish, both migrating and non-migrating birds, muskrats, and other mammals, as well as human beings. In June 2022, WA field volunteers discovered an upwelling of water only about 50 feet from the lake and reported it to the MNDNR. Over a year later, the DNR finally confirmed the breach and notified the public. The effects of aquifer breaches on wetland ecologies are unknown. The plant life supported by these wetland ecosystems, including Manuman or wild rice, evolved to thrive in water chemistry that is much different than aquifer water. Some possible effects we are concerned about are temperature and biochemical changes affecting the ecosystem's ability to access and cycle nutrients. The state agencies are prudently requiring long-term monitoring of this site. Unfortunately, even that can be disruptive, as illustrated by this aquifer breach location that has been shored up with sandbags so they can collect water samples. Wetlands play a critical role in providing fresh water, improving water quality, sequestering carbon, regulating climate, and supporting biodiversity. The Minnesota DNR cites that 50% of our original wetland acreage has already been lost. We are concerned for the entire wetland biome, but especially for the Manuman that grows on the lake where the aquifer water flows into. WA wants to see this aquifer breach fixed, but we also want to see no more harm done to this and all other places that Enbridge has damaged. At this site alone, there are at least 3 new upwellings of water and 4 springs that no longer flow. This is the last site we will see today. It's about 400 feet from the border of the Fond du Lac Reservation on 1854 treaty territory. The Fond du Lac breach, or as Enbridge calls it, milepost 1102.5, occurred September 10, 2021. Enbridge had insufficient information on the area's hydrology and the DNR did not require it. The breach was caused by Enbridge's trenching methods once again, and a minimum of 263 million gallons of groundwater was released. According to Enbridge, the aquifer breach was successfully repaired on April 7, 2022. But WA has documented 3 new seeps just east of Enbridge's 2021 breach site. By plotting their coordinates on a map alongside Enbridge's data, we know that these are new seeps. Here are Enbridge's coordinates of the 2021 breaches plotted on a map. And here are the coordinates of the upwellings WA has recorded. The new upwellings are alarming as it is, but when we look at the thermal data, we see water temperatures of up to 99.9 degrees Fahrenheit. As mentioned before, upwelling aquifer water normally surface with temperatures of around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. In an agreement between Enbridge and the DNR, Enbridge paid $450,000 for ongoing monitoring, with over $1 million more available for restoration, mitigation, or monitoring. Again, we ask, where is the DNR? Where are the state agencies? Who is holding Enbridge accountable for this ongoing damage to the land and water? Joanna Macy writes that, until we can grieve for our planet, we cannot love it. Grieving is a sign of spiritual health, but it is not enough to weep for our lost landscapes. We have to put our hands in the earth to make ourselves whole again. Even a wounded world is feeding us. Even a wounded world holds us, giving us moments of wonder and joy. I choose joy over despair, not because I have my head in the sand, but because joy is what the earth gives me daily, and I must return the gift. A reflection from Robin Wall Kimmerer. So, as we work to hold Enbridge, their contractors, and the state of Minnesota accountable for the harm they have caused, and as we attend hearings and meetings to prevent further harm from being done to the earth and our relatives, we must also cultivate and maintain good relationships with the land, water, and each other. Being on the land in a respectful way is both an act of care and an act of resistance in this society that tries to alienate us from nature. My hope for WA and everyone else is that we will continue to resist harm by direct action against extraction, as well as by being in good relationship with nature, each other, and ourselves. Miigwech, Bizendawiyeg, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Bee. That was really incredible. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So grateful for this work. This is just a couple of pictures to reiterate some of the damages that Bee's video so clearly articulates, and to show you a little bit how Enbridge has avoided accountability for ongoing and emergent damages that are being discovered, tracked, and monitored by Waadookawaad Amikwag. Not only have the damages of aquifer breaches been misrepresented, the quote fixes or remediations have also been inaccurately or incompletely reported. So what you're looking at, Enbridge is a breach here, and Enbridge continued to report their work was complete, yet the land was telling a different story. As with the Clearbrook and LaSalle breaches, when Enbridge reported, which they reported was fixed, the Fond du Lac breach also continued to show upwelling water from the land. So Clearbrook and LaSalle were both noted in the October 2022 enforcement actions between the DNR and Enbridge to still be flowing water. Yet Fond du Lac's ban's fact sheet dated April 7th of 22 continues to note a complete end to the upwelling at this site. Yet these photos from March 5th, 2023 tell a different story. So Waadookawaad Amikwag is asking the state, does this look like a temporary impact of pipeline construction? The next slide is about the hot water upwellings. So Enbridge now is reporting record profits. The Line 393 line is one of the largest tar sands pipelines in existence now. And these sites are being remediated, that have been remediated, continue to leach water from the land. And these remediations, as Bee's video highlighted, are often done with duct tape, zip ties, plastic bags, and totes. In December of 2023, Bee, our drone pilot, recorded upwelling water temperatures of up to 99.9 degrees Fahrenheit. This tremendous impact, which amounts to the equivalent to what our in-floor heating is, flows in the body of these pipelines, pushing oil through our wetlands at these extreme heats. Hot water above discharge limitations permitted here in Minnesota is bringing unknown impacts to the land and adjacent ecosystems. This is a novel issue for the state, and there aren't remediation strategies on record for how to handle these types of hot water upwelling anomalies. So Waadookawaad Amikwag continues to monitor these conditions as they emerge. And I'm going to turn it over to Victoria now to talk a little about Waadookawaad's work moving forward. And I want to remind everybody, please drop questions in the chat so that we can have an ongoing dialogue for the summative of our webinar.
So what's moving forward and we're continuing to do is we're going to continue site visits to monitor damages. We're going to do more inclusive partnership work, including monthly check-ins for deeper collaborations, focusing on inclusion of more high-tech carriers, so Indigenous, traditional, ecological knowledge carriers. We're trying to find more of them to have help in the work, and then we're also working to, calls for action to make sure that this is a knowledge base that is protected and supported. And we're going to continue to notify tribal and community members impacted directly, ongoing notification updates provided to the public, continuing updates to engage agencies, state, federal, and tribal for collaborative accountability, including additional thermal flyover assessments, developing funding and bringing on friends to enhance our volunteer mobilization. What's new? We're going to start looking more into the long-term impacts, continue to monitor and document ongoing issues and consolidate data, especially regarding invasive species and hot water upwellings, building more collaborations across the Great Lakes region and beyond, with a focus on preventing further harm, specifically regarding the Line 5 proposals currently awaiting permit in Wisconsin and Michigan. Also continuing with the cross-border calls. Waadookawaad, and we're launching our Waadookawaad Amikwag website today, which we're really grateful to be able to get to the public, because that's a hub, a base for anyone to come and check out our work at any time, and a way for the community and public to engage with us, so that if there's things on the line that you are seeing out there, or people that might need our data to develop the work further, you can get a hold of us through our website. So we're really grateful. I think we're going to move into a website walkthrough video next.
Yeah. Jami created this. Thank you, V. Jami created this quick video to orient you. We'll also drop the link to the website, Waadookawaad Amikwag's website, in the chat, and watch this quick video that helps you navigate around the website.
Hey everybody, I want to talk to you today real quick about the waadookawaadamikWag.org website that's just being launched. I'm not going to dive too deep, so we can just show you how to use it. This homepage will land you where you can read a bit more on a high level about who we are. But if you want to know how we came about, you can click on the origins of Waadookawaad Amikwag. We have a beautiful page about Indigenous, traditional, ecological knowledge, full of pictures and links to help you understand more. We've got a brief look at what the Line 3 project is. The meat of our work is here in the overview of damages. You can see a high-level view, but also a little update about some of the recent findings. In the middle section on this page, you'll see where you can access information about all the different kinds of damage that we're documenting. And so let's click on aquifer breaches so that you can see maybe one of the most developed pages in the website. Each page will walk you through an overview of what's been happening. It will let you know that we're still awaiting work from the state to truly identify all of these many damages. A little bit about the tools that make the difference. How does Waadookawaad Amikwag know about things that the state doesn't seem to? We've got thermal drones, and we've got field teams on the ground monitoring. We talk a bit here about the criminal charges that were brought against Enbridge and why, and a case study on Moose Lake, which is an aquifer breach that our group helped to bring to public light alongside Healing Minnesota Stories in July of last year. We can also see for each of the pages that there are, at the bottom, a curriculum of videos that can be watched to better understand. We also have fact sheets that can link you to a quick place to see information. The communications timeline is a great place to catch up with all that we've been doing over the last couple of years. We've got a great page about our supporters and collaborators, including the very critical flyover partners, and then the grant support that we've had from the Center for Applied Environmental Science, and also a wonderful grant from the University of Wisconsin-Madison this year have provided resources for us to be able to do the scientific analysis and the water testing. We have a page where you can check out our earned media. The Take Action page gives you a chance to check in on some of the things that you can do in your local community. If you want to get in touch with us and ask a question or let us know that you're interested in helping out, we're happy to hear from you. We're really excited about the work that we're doing going forward, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you if you'd like to be involved.
That was a little orientation to the website. We hope to hear from you. Perhaps you're inspired to start a community science water protection project in your own neighborhood, which we fully support and can ally with. Bee's gonna tell us a little more about funding opportunities for everyone. We are a volunteer-run organization, and we want to continue to monitor and protect these waters. So Bee will give some opportunities around how to help us do that work.
Hey again. So as you have heard, the people who contribute to the work of Waadookawaad Amikwag are all volunteers. Some of us get by on retirement, some of us have second jobs, some of us live in tents during the summer. Fortunately, we have gotten some grants from the University of Wisconsin and from CAES who have supported us by paying wages for technical consultants, paying the lab costs for testing our water samples, and paying for some of my mileage and hours in other ways as well. So soon, when the weather is right, I'll be doing an 864-mile droning mission along the whole pipeline route. I'm getting ready to do a winter trip on the pipeline because, as you saw in the video I made, I visited many of the hot spots last summer, but with consistent snow cover and no leaves on the trees to make shade, many thermal variables are eliminated in the winter compared to the summer. So the thermal data I will collect will be much more accurate. So if you can, and some of you have already, and thank you very much. So if you can, especially if you're getting paid to attend this webinar, please help fund this work, share the message. And we are also looking for a fiscal sponsor so we can access grants and other funding to support our work. So yeah, Chimigwich, thank you very much. And that's all I have on that.
Thank you, Bee. Appreciate that. Jamie's gonna take us through some calls to action and ways for you to engage. Jamie wants to.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I just posted some numbers in the chat, and we really need support. We have been trying really hard to get agencies to listen to us for a long time. This started in October 6th of 2022 with a memo we wrote to the AG, the Public Utilities Commission, and both the DNR and Pollution Control Agency, asking for them to help us hold Enbridge accountable. And we've really struggled, and you'll see some of that evidence in the website details, specifically in our timeline. But we have everything we need, really. We just need to follow what we say we're going to do. Not first and foremost, we have rules that say no pipelines on steep slopes and through wetlands, and yet they permitted it there anyway through this amazing, wonderful water wetland that we live in up here in northern Minnesota, where most of our waters have stayed cleaner than they have in the southern part of the state. We're seeing water issues throughout this place. So requiring the PUC to follow the existing laws, let's do that. We also need to demand that the Department of Natural Resources, the Pollution Control Agency, the Public Utilities Commission, and AG Ellison enlist the help of the Minnesota Department of Health, who's responsible for drinking water along the route. We've found in our work that everything is siloed. So Department of Health has drinking water, and NPCA has these kind of waters, and DNR has these kind of waters, and nobody seems to be making the connections between everything to keep us all safe. So because we've seen that these damages in these places have brought us to places where we really believe they cannot remediate, Enbridge promised temporary impacts. The state said they would make permits that required no permanent impacts, but we have permanent impacts all across this corridor now. So we need to require that Enbridge maintain permanent water appropriation permits for every one of their damaged sites, monitoring in perpetuity these damages that can never be remediated. And now we have this tremendous issue with very, very hot water. The state doesn't have an understanding of where this is coming from. We really need to figure out how these extractive industries are impacting us, not after the project is done, but before the project is done. That's why we really are encouraging groups to take the Waadookawaad Amikwag message and create community science groups before the project comes in. Document the place before, and then tell regulators about what we've seen here in Minnesota, because this is the same potential impacts that you're going to see. Let's move to the next slide. We do have, we had earlier this year a call to action with regard to Moose Lake, or last year, when we brought to the public light this fourth aquifer breach, almost 2 years post construction completion. The DNR, after a year of us asking, finally, because Healing Minnesota's Stories wrote a blog and made the public aware, finally the DNR and Enbridge admitted to a fourth aquifer breach. We have 45 sites along this pipeline that potentially could use that same attention. We are asking that Enbridge be removed from our wetlands. Them and their contractors have no idea how to protect this place. And from what we can see, they lack the care to do it. We watched reckless, rushed construction during a COVID pandemic, and we saw the impacts. We saw the losses here in Indian country. It was horrific. We need to pursue these native voices, these long-lived people in the land who have the expertise about what she is, who she is, how she lives. And so then we can maybe find some solutions that are going to be better amenable to Mother Earth. And we need to urge these calls for protection all across this corridor. We need to challenge, as we had during our last couple of years, letters from both U.S. Rep. Betty McCollum and Ilhan Omar asking the Army Corps and the EPA to come look at what is happening here. We never had an environmental impact statement done by the Army Corps of Engineers. The EPA and the Army Corps, on plea from both these U.S. reps, acted as if everything was fine. They did everything they needed to do. This damage tells a different story. It says we didn't do what we need to do. And I really want to remind you, as Bea has shown us in this amazing video of the beautiful places that have been destroyed, go outside, be with the land and water. Get to know her, get to know the many, many relatives who we share this planet with. We're not being very good sharers right now. And what we really need is to connect ourselves to the land so that we can better understand how dependent we all are on every bit of nature. We need to protect all of her. Miigwech Bizendawi.
Thank you, Jami. Listening to you reminds me of how incredible Waadookawaad Amikwag's work is to not let the pipe remain in the past. It's not a done deal. It's not over. Grass grows on top of it. That doesn't mean it goes out of our memories. It's still impacting these wetlands. And so the perseverance and endurance of Waadookawaad, I think, makes sure that the state, that the communities, that we don't forget that this pipe does not get to sit in the past like Enbridge's media kind of frames it as, right? It says, oh, it's a done deal. It's going to help us in the future. We're moving forward. That's not the case. And so Waadookawaad Amikwag's work and that endurance helps us remain in the present with these wetlands. And I just thank you so much for that. So Miigwech, thank you for coming. Please, we'd love to hear from you. If you have any questions for us, I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now, and look at any questions that we might have that we can address in the time that we have left with each other.
Thank everyone. Thank everyone again for the diligent work here and commitment to this. I think that to some degree this is gaining legs at the legislature. There's some ongoing interest to call out the regulatory capture and the fact that our state agencies aren't doing the work to protect our resources. They seem to be protecting those who are damaging our resources. Senator Marty and Senator Herr are looking at this with some inquiries to the Pollution Control Agency and DNR about missing information. We hear back and forth from the agencies nowadays that they're learning so much. Well, it's kind of late. These are not the lessons we want to learn from mistakes. They're lessons we want to prevent in the future. And this is really the importance of people grasping these impacts for the future of Line 5. There's going to be ongoing activity. Our plans are expanding for Waadookawaad. We think that this hot water upwelling is just confounding. We can't imagine what that's doing to a temperate ecosystem that relies on freezing and thawing cycles and keeping the north cold. And the next phase is really going to be looking at the expansion of invasive species. How we've destroyed these forest corridors in the first instance, and now the almost inevitable march of the weeds that take over these environments. So stay tuned for future work, and please bring this up to your local politicians and officials. We have so many instances where large corporations who have more money than the state come in and they get their way because they have the money, they have the resources, and people care about this in their own backyards. We care about the water, and we want it to flow free. So thank you everyone for your interest.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for some of those words to wrap up. We do have some questions I wanted to bring to the group. The first one we have is, does the warmer water from aquifer breaches impact oxygen levels for aquatic life, like fish, plants, etc.? And perhaps B or Jeff would like to speak to that.
Sure. Oxygen is a direct relationship to temperature of the water. The higher the water temperature, the less oxygen. So in Minnesota waters, in these temperate environments, water 60 degrees or warmer starts stressing things like trout and cold water organisms and the entire biota. Over 80 degrees is not allowed in other permits, like wastewater discharge permits or permits from power plants. 80 degrees is the limit, and yet we're seeing 100 degrees coming out along the pipeline, and it was something that wasn't even revealed. So there's ongoing problems, and it's really not satisfying for the agencies to tell us they've learned so much.
Thanks, Jeff. Another question we had mentioned, how can aquifer breaches during a drought impact well water levels?
I'll take a crack at this again. It seems unlikely because the aquifer breaches are from confined aquifers that are recharged at some distance away. Although we have not assessed those impacts, and that's one of the flaws in this. Wherever they have this uncontrolled flow, it should have an aquifer study just like they do for an irrigation well or just like they do for a municipal well. And yet that's not being done. So it is one of the unknown questions. Thanks for that.
The next question asks, that says caucuses are coming up. Do you have any proposed drafted resolutions for us to take with us? What caucus resolutions should we present? And perhaps this can go to Jami.
Yeah, our work is primarily focused in the field and with the science. Although we are working with the agencies to try and nudge them in directions that we think they should go based on what we're seeing in the land. We really don't spend a lot of time on lobbying or legislation ideas. We have ideas. It's just we got too many other things to do. I will direct you to the Rise and Repair work that's coming up. They have, and hopefully somebody can put a nice link in there. I know that some of the folks organizing for that event are here. They are working with some of the ideas that we need to be getting to legislators, and they're working specifically with the indigenous tribal folks in the state. And so I feel like that's the place where we really should direct people for those kinds of questions. And they've got a big event coming up any minute here, so I'm really hopeful that's going into the chat too. Yeah.
Thanks, Jami. Here's another question. What citizen science projects could be coordinated for students to engage with? Oh, that's so critical. Yeah, thanks for that.
That's a really critical one. I can take a stab at that one. Depending on the age group of the students, I think there's so much that students can get involved with. And I think a really great way to do that would be being able to get some baseline data in just areas along either current pipelines or future pipelines, especially on the biology, ecology route, doing plant surveys. Like what we were saying, we're trying to really gauge of seeing what invasive species are being brought in because of Enbridge doing their construction work. So if we had baseline data of saying, no, these species weren't here before the construction started, that would be really key. Or even being able to just do plant surveys of seeing what has changed since construction has happened. Also, baseline data in terms of being able to look at what aquatic invertebrates are at even potential crossings. So thinking of like line 5, if you're able to see where the crossings would happen and be able to have baseline data of the aquatic invertebrates, the plants that are in those areas, really would help create a robust narrative of what damage could be occurring and having that baseline information.
Thank you, Abby, and thanks for your video earlier. Another question, potentially for Victoria, asks, is Enbridge and Rio Tinto in collusion to obtain resources in Aitkin County? Critical question.
That's hard to say. Our resources wouldn't be able to find that information. But I suppose if we talk to our friends at TIAA Divest, I'm sure they might be able to dig up the investment strategies that these guys use. And I wouldn't doubt that there's cross investments in between the two. And it is quite interesting that Rio Tinto needs the wetland to be dewatered in order to do this type of mining. So either way, there's going to be dewatering even on a larger scale than maybe what we're seeing with this Enbridge project and all the mistakes that with this new mine that's supposed to be proposed and coming through. So it is a huge thing. I think you should ask whoever you know in financials, TIAA Divest. If any of you are a group member or know anybody from that group, you might be able to get some actions happening to find that information and help bring it to light, because it is pretty scary to have all our treaty rights just getting plowed over by corporate capture. Miigwech.
Yeah, this actually, Victoria, might be another question for you. It segues nicely from what you were just talking about with the action steps, but it just asks, I need to know how my res can help empower Waadookawaad Amikwag, and what advice you would give to that.
Yeah, our reservations are run by these Indian Reorganization Act constitutions that were given to us in 1934 and not even ratified until 1964. My mom was born in 1964. So our governments are new, and we're trying to figure out how best to use the power that we retain within them. And so our reservations, be gentle with your elected officials and your community members, because we're all going through really hard times of trying to figure out what is our history with this constitution, our government, the structure. It doesn't feel right. It's not working right because it isn't our clan system. It isn't the way that we used to be able to be involved and get our input brought in. So being gentle with yourself, being gentle with others, and really carrying the teachings forward when you bring this information, I think is the most important thing. And then getting your reservations to utilize their power. If they can go to the state and say, hey, Waadookawaad Amikwag has been bringing you guys information for 2 years or more, why aren't you guys doing more about it? Why aren't you guys in a relationship with them when they've tried to create a relationship with you to give you this data for the people of the state? And we're doing this all voluntarily. There's not much funding coming through to support the work other than the grants and things that we've been getting. And so and those run out. So we're going to need more funding. We would love for the tribes. They might be able to help with another thermal flyover of the entire line like we did initially. We really would love to do something like that as soon as, well, Jeff could talk about the timing for that better, but to have another full assessment of the line as we did in the beginning, I think would really show some differences that we all need to see and understand and be able to respond to. But yeah, talk to your reservations, your environmental departments, show them our website, tell them to get in contact. We're not scary people. We just want to share the information and help work together to bring the truth to light and live in a better way. Go ahead, Jeff.
Just a really quick comment too on the value of the thermal imaging. This is the tool that really broke this open for us, because in literally 2 days of flights at the right time of year, either during the winter when the ground is froze and the water upwelling is warmer, the natural, or in the summer, the converse, where the natural waters are warm and the cold waters are coming up. Gives us entire picture of this. I'd really recommend that there be thermal imaging along any future routes in Wisconsin, but we can prove, because of the resolution, high resolution of the data, where these hydrological problems are on line 3. We should rerun that, and for a cost in the range of $55,000 or $60,000 before we were able to open up the eyes of ourselves and the state regulators by understanding this thermal fingerprint of the line.
Jeff, that kind of goes into a little bit of a couple questions that I can combine here, that asks if we could describe a little more about where we might think what's causing the hot water. Is this related to tectonic plate activity, volcanic activity, things like that? That's some of the questions.
Good question. Minnesota does not have natural waters that exceed about 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Our natural groundwater temperature range is in the range of 45 to 50 degrees. So it's exceedingly unusual for us to see 90-degree water. And the only explanation we can come up with is based on the literature review of other pipelines, where it's stated that the friction of the high volume flow of heavy fluids through the pipe causes friction. And that friction can heat the pipe up to 120 degrees. If that's the case, we believe the engineers from Enbridge would have known that fact. They would have had to design their pipeline for thermal contraction, expansion, the efforts to keep it safe, and would have taken that into account. But there was no disclosure of this risk in the permits whatsoever. And now that it's happening, we want to know why. We want to know what the impact is. And we want to know if this is really the best thing to do in temperate and Arctic environments. The Alaskan pipeline is built on big piers, so it doesn't thaw the permafrost. We're seeing a similar impact on our seasons here, and we think it's a dramatic change in the environment that shouldn't be allowed.
Thank you. This next question, actually, this is a really interesting question. There were provisions in some of the DNR permits to provide funding to support the recovery of threatened species, like land acquisition, et cetera. Does Waadookawaad know how to track those funds, or any updates from the DNR and where those funds are going? I'll open that up to the group here.
Well, I don't see Jeff coming off mute. He's our guy who knows where the funds are in the state. But I will speak to the fact that Science for the People did some amazing work to try and manage and monitor threatened species along the pipeline during and before construction. And they were really stonewalled by the DNR. They didn't get data, as I recall, and pardon me for any mistakes in speaking, but I believe it was like months after the pipeline had already been constructed when the DNR finally gave them data. And then it was really not data that had any locations, because they were worried these scientists were going to do some damage to the endangered species, I guess. It's just kind of ridiculous, some of the things that we've had to deal with from the agencies. There is, as Jeff has said, a complete environment of regulatory capture. We, from the very beginning, just to go back a little bit further, when Walz was elected, I remember standing in his office with a bunch of water protectors asking to be heard about this Line 3 project, and being promised meetings and promised meetings and promised meetings that never happened. Yet Enbridge was meeting week after week after week, filling the agents with Kool-Aid about how wonderful this was all going to be, and there was not going to be any problem. And we see now that this is not true. I'm really baffled by why we continue to believe that Enbridge has any best interests for Minnesota after what we've watched happen, whether it's coming through with lots and lots of workers from out of state and red hot COVID zones into this place of real sensitivity to the disease, whether it's not providing all the information. One of my favorite things is, Enbridge told us HDD, horizontal directional drilling, would be the safest way to cross these critical water bodies. What they didn't tell us is that it's typically about a 50% failure rate for frac outs on those projects. And what they didn't tell us too was that they have a higher than average failure rate, and they failed at 67% of their horizontal directional drilling locations. There are so many little things that have shown us over and again that Enbridge is lying, that Enbridge is not taking our best interests. And Clearbrook Terminal, is the breach that happened there, was a clear example where they dug deeper than their 8 to 10 foot low risk construction permit. They trenched to 18 feet. Then they pounded in sheet pilings to 28 feet. And Jeff shares stories about how this must have been a huge water. How could they not have realized they burst an aquifer? How could they not, after multiple reports of unrelenting water flow, not acted in the DNR? I mean, it feels so much like there's just this trust the applicant, trust the client, let's just keep building infrastructure, when in fact what we need to be protecting is the natural infrastructure on which each and every one of us relies every day of our lives. So I can't speak specifically to the DNR where you can find things. I will tell you one other thing real quick before I turn it back over to Chelsea. I don't know how many questions we're amassing, but we were kind of running low. But one of the things that's been really frustrating for our team, especially as we've got some really great folks, Bernadette Knabley has been fantastic with pushing for more recognition of invasive species. And as I understand from Jeff, some of the first environmental laws were around invasive species. And yet this too is not getting enough attention. And we reached out to Anna Holtz at the MPCA, because the DNR website for Line 3 still contains quite a bit of the documentation. But MPCA, almost everything you look for is gone. It's nowhere to be found. Well, if this project is still under construction through remediation, why can the public not access those documents? Why is the agency ghosting us with regard to our requests for these very important documents that we need to do this work? It is an uphill battle, and funding isn't our only issue, although it is a big one. And we're really hopeful to get some fiscal sponsorship this year. There's just so many things to do and so many places to visit and so much evidence to gather. And all of the administrative stuff also has to be done. So we're really grateful for anybody who wants to come in and start assisting and helping us with our work. And yeah, I'll turn it back to Chelsea now. Ramble on quite significantly.
No, it's all important information. Please continue to submit some questions in the chat. We have almost 15 more minutes. Please send them my way. There's one that says, doesn't tar sands have to be heated in order to flow through pipelines? I can take that if that's okay. You know, tar sands they're considered a low-grade hydrocarbon. Forgive me if this is old information for anybody, but they liken extracting tar sands as extracting honey from a bowl of sugar. It's a really viscous type of oil. It doesn't act normally. It actually sinks. It's so thick. And so in order to actually push it through pipes, they have to mix it with a chemical concoction that they call dilbit, which are highly volatile chemicals that they mix into this low-grade hydrocarbon, this sort of bottom of the barrel hydrocarbon, and extremely volatile chemicals, explosive chemicals that go into this that produce a dilbit. And even when they do this mixture to make it a sludge, they still have to heat these pipes. And so to extreme degrees to push this substance through these pipes, right? And so when we were in the summer, when construction was happening, there was a lot of hydrostatic testing of the newly laid pipe with a lot of dewatered groundwater they were pushing it through the pipe at high velocities to produce that heat to make sure the pipe had integrity to keep from rupturing, right? And so the answer, long story here, is yes, this type of crude oil has to be not only heated but mixed with these volatile chemicals, and it also sinks, so it doesn't float like oil would. Typically it sinks, and so it's a particularly bad candidate to put somewhere like wetlands, of course, right? So I don't see any more questions for now.
I've been kind of poking Jackie. I'm wondering if she might speak a second to the work that the field team does. I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but you always bring such good words, Jackie, about what our folks are doing out in the field.
Wow, thanks for that. I feel so grateful and really honored to be part of the field team. It is all at once, very rewarding and very beautiful and very heartbreaking. Yeah, some of these places we go, I've been to many times now, and the relationship only deepens. It's beautiful to see when Mother Earth starts her own, remediation of these spaces. And I've been fortunate to see some of that. I've also seen the flip side of that where, there's healing. We see healing in the lands and the waters, and then, Enbridge, their contractors, the state of Minnesota, whomever it is, comes in and just digs it all up again. And that's really, after witnessing that, when we came as a team to this request for do no more harm, because I think previous to that, we all felt like, fix it, you made this mess, you created these impacts, fix it. And they can't. And so it's really oftentimes best that we just allow support and be witness with the earth doing her thing and what it knows best. So I about this new part of our field team, the plant communities team, and there's a group of folks just taking off and running with that. And I'm looking forward to learning through them and adding that to our experience in the field, because I've been pretty focused on water testing. but yeah, it really does take a community. You know, B's work is critical. The flyover from 2021 is critical. And then just, you know, how everybody contributes. Yeah, it's pretty special. If you're interested in in some really physically challenging but beautiful work, on the ground field work, you know, reach out to us. And yeah, it feels important to witness. So thanks.
Thanks for sharing that perspective, Jackie. There's so much, no pun intended, groundwork that goes on with this process. It's hard to capture here. A lot of inertia. Here's one. If there is a rupture of pipe and the oil sinks, how would we know other than the Enbridge monitored pressure gauge change? We cannot trust them to tell us.
I can maybe address that. The pipeline safety is a priority through different offices in Minnesota, and any loss of pressure in the line or indication of a breach would have to be reported as an emergency and can even trigger evacuation orders. The volume of oil flowing through the line, 750,000 barrels a day, will be obvious even if there's a small breach. The pipe is only buried with a minimum of 4 feet cover in earthen trenches. And you know, it's interesting that we haven't really talked at Waadookawaad about the unmitigated disaster that would occur with this, but it's always on our mind. And it's a worry, but we want to make sure that these mistakes aren't made in other places first, that we're not allowing this risk to occur in line 5 or other places.
If I can add something to that too, Jeff. So previously I worked in environmental consulting and in hazmat response, and partially that was for pipeline responses. And this is partially one of many reasons of really wanting to shift into this proactive work, was additionally with all of the safeguards that the pipeline states that they have, is when they have what they refer to as like pinhole leaks in a pipeline, those will cause massive amounts, thousands of gallons of product to be released, and it won't be noticed by their pressure system. So even the things that they claim have safeguards, oftentimes, you know, we'd have stories or reports of the pipeline didn't know about it. It was farmers in the field tilling, and they were finding oil in their fields that then they would notify the pipeline and say, what is going on? So it is a large concern. The safety guards that they claim they have, they do fail. And even those multiple layers will fail at all those multiple levels.
Thanks, Abby. Also pointing to the critical importance of community-based organizing like this, that when the state is often neglecting these duties. I think a final, maybe closing question for the group could be this really kind question. How are you all supporting your spirits and hearts in all of this difficult work? I'm going to open that up to the group.
I'll say something. So I spend a lot of time in nature, and I think that it's really, really important for everyone to do that, to make good relationships with nature. I had a rule for myself during the construction of Line 3 that however much time I had to spend witnessing the destruction or police violence, I would spend at least that amount of time in the woods or on the water or just away from all of that. And, you know, we are water protectors, and it's really important to get to know the ones we are protecting. So yeah, I think just being outside as much as possible. Jeff?
Well, and what boosts me is the sharing of indigenous knowledge with science. to have people that have a cultural, spiritual view of the landscape is different than how I grew up, learning numbers and data. And it makes a big difference in my life and other people's life.
Be good for that, Jeff. Yeah, our group, we're cross-cultural, so we do take a lot of stops in the work to talk about cultural things that might be overlooked or not understood. So we do a lot of clarifying between our groups. We spend a lot of time discussing how we're treating each other or how we're treating the work, or just lots of dynamics. We work on our cross-cultural dynamics and our group dynamics quite often. It's always hard to work in a group with a lot of people from different backgrounds, but it's a challenge that I think most of us have been really willing and open to accept. And so we have our good days and we have our bad days, and then we have our healing days, and we get back to it. And we're really grateful to learn what we do from each other, and then to have, you know, our perspectives, Indigenous perspectives, being shared out there in the world when we're more dedicated into being in the woods, you know, and gaining that knowledge and teaching our children those things. So we don't have much time to go and teach the rest of the world about what we saw today or how we feel about it or what our teachings say about it. We are grateful to have allies like these to help carry those understandings forward to others. So yeah, we have lots of ways we take care of each other, and we're really grateful for all of you for coming today and helping be a part of that, because now it's your turn, and we appreciate whatever you do with this work and how you bring it forward in whatever skills and wisdom that you carry. So miigwech Bizindawieg.
Thank you, Victoria. Always really happy to have your good words. And I agree, this team has done a lot of work. It is hard. We are doing some of the most difficult work that I personally have ever done in my life, and it's also the most rewarding. I do want to just give a couple of housekeeping notices. I know people are asking about, hey, the website says there's a password. We're going to release that today. We're going to remove the password so that everybody can have access. And we will be sending out some information to everybody who's signed up and registered. We'll send out some updates with links, etc. But we are going to take about a week off here. We've gotten through some major work with providing all the site surveys for the lawsuit against, dismissing Enbridge's criminal charges, and all of this work to put together this amazing view for you all to see the work that we're doing. And so we are going to take a little break here, but we will be getting back to folks, and we will be getting into the website and starting to engage with everybody. So we're looking forward to that, but give us a little bit of a week or two to just regain ourselves as we wrap up from all this really good work. So, and thank you so much to Sierra Club for hosting us today, and to Chelsea for leading us through this in such a beautiful way, and to everyone who cares. Thank you. Miigwech.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We look forward to collaborating with you further, hearing from you. And yeah, take a nice walk in the woods today. Thanks, everybody.